Hi, my name is Joseph Malone, and today I will be completing my oral defense of my original research on the cholera epidemics of 1854 and 1866. So I want to provide an overview of how the defense will be structured. First, I will provide an overview of the historical setting. Then I will discuss my methodology and pronounce my thesis. After that, I will discuss the various approaches doctors, physicians, and intellectuals use to approach the understanding of the cholera epidemic. Lastly, I will then discuss the actual cause of cholera and the treatment approaches. And lastly, I will discuss how my research fits into the historiography and my final conclusions. So we are talking about a time period of Victorian London. This is in the 19th century. Um, so to set the scene, it is 1854. 2 million people live in a 30-mile circle. Cesspools are overflowing. The city's main river and water supply are polluted with human waste. Housing conditions are abysmal. Medical and scientific understanding is limited. Occultism and mythological thinking are rampant. This is life in Victorian London. So there are consequences of industrialization, particularly the modernization that causes mass immigration from the countrysides of Europe into economically thriving cities such as London. London is not set up or prepared for such massive expansion. And so these single family homes that are in London begin to occupy multiple people in a room. In some cases, 5 people live in a room. In these homes, in these neighborhoods, also exist a partition to operate a small business. Most people, the homeowners are engaged in a local trade of food, goods, and a variety of other services. And so this neighborhood is also serviced to supply water to it, serviced by a water pump and also a cesspool. And so the cesspool temporarily stores liquid waste and sewage. And so night soil men work to remove the waste from the city's overflowing cesspools. This excess waste is sold to farmers located in the city's countryside. And the neighborhood's water supply, unfortunately, inevitably becomes contaminated by wastewater from the unkept cesspools. And so people unknowingly continue drinking water contaminated with waste. Large sums of people become sick. Doctors and medical professionals are perplexed. Is it poisonous air? Is there a immoral imbalance? Tens of thousands of people die. The crown is concerned, local governments are concerned, intellectuals are concerned, and so everyone asks, how are large sums of people becoming ill and dying as a result? So I want to discuss my methodology very briefly. Um, I went into this project seeking to understand action, and then so that's something very difficult to do as a historian, but I tried my best to do it. I think it's one thing to understand ideas, it's one thing to understand the medical approaches and the broader understanding of a medical community and how they see this disease. But it's also very interesting to see if you can and observe of their convictions, how they acted upon the information that they knew. And so part of the thesis of this paper is that there was a fundamental change in where the identification of the proper cause was identified, but that didn't necessarily change how they approached treating the disease. And so I began by trying to determine the authority. And so for me, authority rests on consensus. So how many physicians are believing a particular theory, believing a particular cause? And so not only just that, I wanted to know in terms of intensity, do they believe in their convictions enough to act? And so here I'm granting that all of the physicians behaved in such a way. behaved in such a way where they performed the best care that they possibly could for their patients. And so my thesis, to just restate it, is in the 1840s, in the 1840s, there was a fundamental change in how physicians understood cholera in the United Kingdom. However, it did not lead to changes in how London physicians treated cholera patients. So we begin with the germ theory doctors. And so this is what I found to be consistent of most of all of the doctors who I studied. Most of them were concentrated in believing that cholera was spread through contagion. Cholera, this idea that it spread from person to person. And so Charles Cowdell, a surgeon who was affiliated with the Royal College of Physicians, very important in this period. Surgeon is a lot different from doctor. And so his publication provides a great source for analysis on the various extents and ways in which various doctors in this period understood this disease. And so predominantly the ones that he talked about, Dr. Taylor, Dr. Burrell, Dr. Ryman, these all three of these doctors believed that this was spread from person to person through contagion to contagion. We also have William Farr, another doctor who was actually one of the writers to the British Crown on the report written for the public in 1866. He argued that this was also contagion. This was moved from person to person via a material substance. So waterborne disease, Dr. John Snow, the infamously known Dr. John Snow, comes on the scene 1854. He writes in the official report to the St. James Westminster Parish that he believes that cholera was propagated in the body's waste and spread through contamination between the drinking water and the wastewater. And so this actually is very interestingly confirmed later on. Other physicians are coming on the scene, other intellectuals are coming on the scene. For example, there's a British chemist who comes on the scene. He examines the water from all three of London's rivers, and he sees that the contents that are in the drinking water are also in the wastewater because the flow of sewage is going from uh from the persons, the people, the neighborhoods into the directly into the Thames River. And so he's seeing that there's this contamination of drinking water. Another intellectual during this time, Reverend Whitehead, also argues the pollution of the Thames River caused the circulation of impure water because the Broad Street pump, for example, in the St. James Parish, I mean, this water is getting sourced right from the Thames River. And so Dr. Snow is a big pioneer of that. But what's interesting, right, with Dr. Snow is that even though he understood the cause of the disease, he still didn't necessarily change his approach in treatment. And so he recommends sulfur for a particular patient. And the idea behind sulfur was that it was a humoral approach and that it would restore the balance, the blood imbalance in the body. And so sulfur was believed to be able to assist in doing that. And so moving to the final portions of this presentation, the historiography and how my research fits. And so historians are interested in doing exactly what I just did in my research, which is to understand how did Victorian physicians approach treating the disease. They're also interested in studying the history of epidemics. They are interested in understanding how the large-scale migration created these housing conundrums and the conditions that allowed London to become such an unclean place where a virus like cholera and typhoid could really propagate in such conditions. And so my final research findings, the biggest thing that comes out of this research is that there was a fundamental change in the 1840s and the 1850s. Um, Dr. Snow, Percy Franklin, and Reverend Whitehead, they argued that the cause of the epidemic was the result of contaminated drinking water and wastewater. The flow of sewage directly into the drinking supply unquestionably impacted the material content of the water consumed in neighborhoods whose water was sourced from the Thames River. So I interject the historiography and I support that conclusion that, hey, like this was the result of lack of infrastructure in London. But also I intersect and I say, okay, well, the doctors understood this. There was this fundamental change, but it didn't change how they treated the symptoms of the disease. I mean, cholera is not a lethal disease in a modern context. It has a less than 1% mortality rate when treated properly. However, in Victorian London, we saw 16% to 200% rates of mortality in Victorian London. And so that just goes to show that the physicians, even though understanding the disease, didn't quite go about treating it in the proper manner. And so I just want to thank you guys for listening to my presentation today. Um, Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.